Hey everyone, welcome back. Fingreat here again. And today we are going to be doing something a little bit different. I'm sure we've seen that from the cover. So as much as most of us would want us to just focus on adding money, I think we still need to tidy up some loose ends. At the moment when we run our tests, which I'm going to do now, so we have this one test failing, and this actually happened when we introduced the whole account flow. So the reason why this is failing is because after running the test for our users, we try to delete the users. However, our account data depends on that user information. So as a result of that, we can't delete the user. So one way to fix this is to actually adjust our migrations. So we can come back here. So this is more like an error and not an update. So this should have happened initially. So as a result of that, we are actually tweaking an existing migration. So here is the migration. Here we created the accounts. So what we want to do here for the user ID, which is the cause of the issue, is, so at the moment it's referenced as the foreign key, but we can improve it better. So the whole idea is, if the user does not exist, then the account associated with that user should not exist. So what we are going to do instead is we are going to specify an onDelete flag. So here we're going to have onDelete. So what do we want to do whenever we delete the user? So we have two major options. You see that we cascade it, and the whole idea about cascade is if we delete the user, then it should remove the account as well, or we should set it to none. And what that does is when we delete the user, it's going to set the user ID field to be null, which is not going to work in that situation because this field is expected to be not null. So the only option we are left with is just the cascade. Okay, so there we have it. And if you are taking alongside me, you realize that we have the same situation with others. So now that the account is going to be deleted on delete of the user, what is going to happen to the entries? The same situation. What is going to happen to the transfers? The same situation. And you get right. So we're going to do the same thing for the entries and the transfer. So on delete, cascade. So if the account goes, then the entries too should go. The same thing for the transfers, on delete, cascade. Alright, so we've made our improvements. Now it's time to run the test and see if it works. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop the ODB, then recreate it and run our test. So we don't have to bother with handling the migration flow. So make DB down. Okay, then also we have DB up. So now let's run our migration. So M up. All right, so our migrations are up and running. So the next thing now is to actually test what we've done. So make tests. All right, so as we can see, this time around, we have all our tests running and passing as we want it. So that's the first part of our focus. And the next part is actually with the old DB thing, okay? Because at the moment, we have a separate Postgres server for our tests. And I think that's an overkill. It's just a test. It's not doing anything special. So instead, what we are going to do is we are going to have a single Postgres server for our system. And whenever we want to run a test, we are going to create a DB on that Postgres server for the tests on the fly. And once we are done with the DB, we are going to delete it. So that's the plan, and I think that makes more sense. So in preparation for that, we are going to come back to our env here, and we are going to shrink this. So all we need at the end of the day is just the DB source. We are not going to need the DB live again, so we'll remove this. And also we want to adjust this to just this. So we're going to be setting the other part from the code, and we'll get to see that later on. So now we are going to introduce a new DB information, and that's going to be the DB name. So DB name is going to be Fingreat DB. All right, so that's about that. And since we've added something new to our env, we want to come back to the utils config and include this. So here we no longer have the DB source live, so we are going to remove that and change this to DB name. And here we're going to have DB name update the source live here. All right, so we are back on that part. And with this, we are going to have some errors because we've changed things which we've been kind of referencing before. So yeah, that's it about that. So if we come back to the API, you can see that we have an error. We have an issue with the DB source and so here, instead of having this as the DB source, we are going to have DB source plus config dot DB name, then plus. So we still need the SSL mode, so we can add it as well. So yeah, that's the updated version, and this should still work with what we want. So next thing is to come back to our Docker Compose, and we want to remove the Postgres live. So that means we are only left with this, and this should be sufficient enough. Okay, we are good on that note. And finally, we want to come back to our main tests and update things. So here we have the DB source, which is not complete. So as a result of that, we won't get everything we need. But for what we want to do, we are going to need a package. And because we are going to be creating our DB on the fly, we are also going to be making these migrations on the fly. Okay? So because of that, we need the migrate package. And here it is, go get this. So go learn, go migrate version 4. Click enter. All right, so we have the package we need. Next, we can proceed to what we actually want to do. So I can close this for now. So back within our test main, we have the config as normal, which we should. So here I have to define some constants so that in case anybody wants to adjust anything, it's going to be easier. So here I'm going to have the test DB name, and I'm just going to call this test DB, like that. Then also I want to specify the SSL mode because we're going to be using it at several points, so we don't have to keep typing the same question mark and so on. So here I'm going to have SSL mode equals to question mark SSL mode equals to disable, like that. So next thing I want to do is to create a master connection, which we are actually onto something here already. So remember, this DB source is no longer complete. It doesn't have the SSL mode. And what we want to do here is just add the SSL mode to it. So this is just going to connect to the Postgres server. It's not going to connect to any DB. Okay? And I think that's going to be sufficient. So here this is going to change from could not connect to database to could not connect to Postgres server. Or we could actually make this a little bit efficient by changing this to fatal F. Then now we can have this as %s and this as %v. So that means we need to specify two information. So the S is going to be the driver, the DB driver itself, and we can get that from config.dbdriver. And the V is going to be the error. Okay, so I think that's much more like it. So this is going to make the information customized. So now that we have the connection, we want to create a new database for our tests. And I can just add a comment so that we can reference that. So create. So I don't care about the result of the connection because I won't bother about that. So I'm going to have this as an underscore, then error, in case an error exists. And because we've defined error already, this is just going to be an equals to. And here we're going to have the connection dot exec, and we're going to have create database and so on. So here we're going to have fmt dot printf and so. And here is going to be %s. Then we close it. We always have to close our stuff here. And we specify the test DB name. So we have to import this. So next we can check if there is an error creating our database, and I can just copy this. And this time around, we don't need this. So we can just say encountered an error creating database. So for this, we only need the error. All right. Then now that we've created the database, let's connect to that database. So remember, we still have this connection going on. Okay, so we're going to keep that. And instead, we're going to create a new connection variable. And I'm just going to call this T connection because it's test connection. So T connection, then error. And because T connection is a new variable, we are going to use the colon equals to. And we're going to have SQL.open. Then again, the config.driver, comma, config.db source, then plus the DB name, which is the test DB name, plus the SSL mode. Okay? So now this is our connection, and now we can revert back to could not connect to database. Okay? So if error is not nil, we can now say. So the next thing is we want to initialize our migration. And to do that, we can have Postgres, which we are going to obtain from what we installed. So here it is. And I specified Postgres because we are working with a Postgres DB. Dot with instance. We're going to specify the test connection, which is tcon. Then we are going to specify the Postgres config. And because it's a pointer, we're going to get the value. So Postgres.config, like that. And when we are doing this, we are expecting a driver or an error. So we can say driver from our error cross to this. And since there is a possibility of error, we can also check our error. Come back here. Paste that. The error here would be. However, if we're able to get the driver, we want to point the driver to our migrations directory, which is here, and run migration. So to do that, again, we are going to add migrate, which we are going to import from the package we installed, .new with database instance. So here I'm going to format my directory. So here is going to be fmt.printf. And by default, I'm going to have file into this. So it should be S, because I'm getting the string and not the error value. And the directory itself should be outside here, which is migrations. So we are going to have ... to get outside of our test. Then we specify migrations like that. Then we supply the database driver, which is config.driver. Then we supply our driver, which is this. Again, there's a possibility of an error. So here I'm just going to call this mig, which is for migration. Then error, which is equals to this. So again, if there is an error, we want to prompt it. So here I'm just going to have migration. Then finally, let's apply the migration itself. So here we can have mig.up because that's what we want to do. However, there's a possibility of an error as well. So we can say if error, because error is not a new variable, then if error is not nil, and if error is not equivalent to migrate.no change. So what we are trying to check here is if error is not nil, which is the false validation, and if error is not error no change. Because if there is no change to our database, it's going to be represented as an error. But we don't want to listen to that error because it's not a bad error. It's just the fact that there is no change. So yeah, if there's an error with that, then we want to log fatal again. So here this is going to be migration up failed. So we couldn't migrate up. And that's fine. And after doing all this, we want to create our test query as usual. However, the connection now is going to be T connection because that's our test DB. Okay. But before we just run our tests, we want to also be able to tear down the whole process. So because of that, I'm going to extract the run process into a variable. And here I can just get a code from it because when we run, it's going to return a code. So we are going to have m.run. Then after we are done running our process, we want to tear down the whole process, which I'm going to create a function for later on. So tear down. And I'm going to pass the connection we created here because remember, we didn't close it. So I'll pass this. And before getting to the teardown itself, once I'm done running my code, I want to close the connection for the testDB. So we can have tcon.close. So we are done with that. Then I want to remove the testDB from our server and close the master connection. So we don't have to recreate it or anything. That's why I still left it there. So we are going to create a teardown function. We can do that here. So function teardown. And this is going to be come into SQL.db. And here we are going to have the connection.exec. Again, I think we get the gist. So we are going to have fmt.spreadf into. Then I want to specify a condition here with false, because there's possibility that the database is still doing some stuff. But at this point, we are done with our tests. The test has either failed or passed. And as a result of that, we don't care for what the database is still doing. So we just want to remove it. So with false, then we close this up. Then we specify the database name, which is going to be testDB name. Okay. So again, there is a possibility of an error, but we don't need the data itself, the information that is being returned. So we can just have that as underscore. Then the error, and this is going to be a new variable. So we have the colon this. And before we go further, let's quickly fix the error here. So now, because we've extracted this, we are going to OS as the code instead. So that's what we have to do there. So if error exists here, so if error is not new, so again, we are going to log.fatalf. So we can just have failed to drop database, or let me call it to drop testDB. Okay. Then %v, then the error. Then once we are done with everything, if there's no error, we want to close the connection. Okay. So this looks like more code, but trust me, this is more better, because now we don't have to manage two database separately, and we don't have to manage two Postgres server. So as a result of that, we can come back to this. And before we update this, let's just drop the databases first. So I'll pull up my terminal, clear this out, then make db. Yeah, make db that might not work again because we are using the Docker. So I'll have to manually remove that. But technically, we are done with this. So we are done with this as well. We are done with everything that involves the live section. So again, we are done with this. And we are done with this. So as you can see, it's looking even more cleaner. Okay. So now let's do db down. Okay. So we dropped 1 db. And let's do db up. We've created 1 db. That's looking good. So the next thing is to make the migration up. So we have make m up. So that worked. And we can just confirm m down. That worked as well. So let's make it up once more. That's cool. So now let's actually confirm our tests. So we can now have make tests. Okay, there is an error. Unknown driver file, forgotten import. Okay, let's take a look at what this. So here is where the error happened. Migration setup failed. So as suggested here, there is an import we have to make as well. So here we're going to pull this down, just like we have with PQ. There is a file import as well. So here I'm going to have this. And here I'm going to have the source comma file / file. All right, so now that we've added, let's confirm the test again. Okay, there is another error. So technically, we were unable to get to our teardown. As a result of that, the table still exists. So I will go ahead and delete the table and run this test. So one thing we can do just to avoid this is whenever we have an issue after creating our testDB and we log that error, we want to kind of tear down first before logging the error. Okay? So that way we can still remove the DB and log our error. So here we created the DB, and that's fine. I think if we are unable to create the DB, then there's nothing to do. However, any other thing aside from creating the DB, I want to tear down and specify the con here. So the same thing, I come down here, paste, the same thing here, and the same thing here. Okay, so before I log the error and break the code, I want to first tear down and remove my database. Okay, let's confirm if this is working. So I'll clear this out, make tests, and voila, our test is still running. And now after everything is done, if we come back here, close this, and try to get our DB again, we'll find out that the test DB is no longer there. And the operation is quite fast that we don't see the issue. So yeah, I think that works. So that's it in regards to our plan for today. And in our next episode, we'll actually work on adding money. So stay tuned for that. So if you enjoyed the episode so far, leave a thumbs up, try to engage the channel so that we can grow even better and provide even better videos. Thanks, and see you in the next one. Bye for now.